Oh, hey, welcome to the basement. So this morning we had an extra Roots of Thought class, and if you're a remote student, because it was in person, you missed out on that extra lesson. So I'm going to do a version of that lesson here so that you are with your classmates when we meet in our remote blocks Thursday afternoon and Friday afternoon. Now, of course, we are also meeting in person with in-person students tomorrow morning and Friday morning. So there's probably going to have to be another one of these as well. But since today was a nice big full block and an introduction to Antigone, it's pretty important that you get some of the same information as your classmates. So when we left off yesterday, I previewed the idea of drama in ancient Greek theater. I introduced you to our author Sophocles. I introduced you to the idea that he was fascinated with questions of human choice and morals. And I presented the Heinz dilemma. Now, the Heinz dilemma involves something that we can wrap our minds around, which is a wife who is sick, a medicine that would solve that sickness. That medicine is very expensive, and it's against the law to steal things that aren't yours. In the Heinz dilemma, we, as a class, split into thirds. Some of us said, go ahead and steal the medicine because it's unfair that it's so expensive, so the law of stealing doesn't apply here. Some of you said that the law of stealing is the law. So sorry, I know your wife is going to die, but you can't steal. And we had yet another third of you say, go ahead and steal it because the law is rough on you here, but it's still the law, so you're going to have to go to jail. This is actually moral development. And so where you are in your development of your understanding of morals and ethics is actually going to dictate a little bit where you fall on that. But it's not like even once you develop a full sense of morals as an adult human, that this stuff gets any easier. And Antigone is a play that explores one of these scenarios. But instead of it being illness and medicine and stuff that we can wrap our minds around, it is the idea of a soul going to the underworld. And if a body is not buried upon death, that soul would wander for eternity in the underworld, which is a pretty severe punishment. So when we get to the play, a character is going to be punished, even though they're dead, but because the ancient Greeks believed in this underworld, it's an extreme punishment because it is like sending someone to jail for infinity years, even though they're dead. The other thing we need to understand is we need to understand Antigone's family tree, because she and the other characters in the play are going to make references to her father and her brothers and the royal line of Thebes. So, I have prepared here this family tree. And it is slide 24 on the Introduction to Greek Theater presentation that's in Google Classroom. So you can actually download this picture yourself and scribble these notes yourself, either digitally or printing out and doing it with a pencil. I'm going to go ahead and tell the story of Oedipus Rex, otherwise known as Oedipus the King, which is the first of the 3 plays in this trilogy that we are studying because we're studying Antigone, which is the third of the 3 plays. Now, my retelling here is what you need to know for class. It's not a perfect retelling. I was reviewing the story for doing a video, wondering if I wanted to send you a video of someone else telling it instead, and I had this nice little lesson on storytelling, and that stories change by the teller. And I'm going to go ahead and give you my version of this myth because it's the stuff that I want you to know for our unit. And it might get some of the details wrong, and it might leave some of the details out. It'll also include details that I really enjoy, or maybe even ones that I've embellished in the telling. So just understand that that's the way myth and storytelling works, especially in the oral tradition. So Thebes is a city-state, and it's going to have a king. So even though it is a part of this larger network of Greek city-states, each of the city-states has their own king. They're like a country inside the larger geographic area of Greece. And so while all the ancient Greeks would have considered themselves to be Greek, in terms of a citizenship, they consider themselves to be of these kingdoms that are city-sized. And so this takes place in the city-state of Thebes, this play. Sophocles himself was Athenian, and the drama festivals where these plays would have taken place would have been Athens. But this is a setting of another city-state, Thebes. Now, we start with Cadmus. He's in italics here because he's one of the kings of Thebes. And you can see the whole line of kings by all their italics. It's also sort of down here. Gives that away, doesn't it? In order to find, or be the founder of, I should say, a city-state, well, you're going to have some connection to Mount Olympus. So we have some gods and goddesses up here. We have Ares and Aphrodite, who together have a child, Harmonia, a demigod. Line is formed because she marries Cadmus, which gives him the sort of Olympian authority to start a new city-state. And when they have a kid in Polydorus, there creates a succession of kings. And of course, in a monarchy, there's this belief that the divine right of rulership comes from somewhere, and often it's religious. And so in this belief system, it's going to be, well, if I go all the way back to Cadmus and Harmonia's marriage, we are descended from gods. So we get to Laius. And Laius, like lots of Greeks, is going to go seek oracles for advice. And he is the father of a proud new newborn baby boy, but he goes to the oracle, and the oracle says, like, that kid is going to grow up, going to kill you. Now, Laius, he doesn't want to give up his kingdom through being murdered. You know, he likes being king. So he does something pretty terrible, grabs that newborn baby boy, leaves Thebes, goes to a mountain, turns him upside down, and nails that baby's foot to a rock. Well, that baby does not die. It is found, and it is cared for, and that baby grows up with the name Oedipus. Oedipus meaning swollen foot. From the rock nailing. And Oedipus grows up in another kingdom, cared for by a different mother and father. Oedipus himself is going to go seek one of those prophecies, and he hears something pretty familiar. Hey, you're going to grow up and you're going to kill your dad. Now, Oedipus doesn't know that he is adopted. And so when he hears that he's going to kill his dad, he thinks he's killing his adopted dad. He doesn't know about Laius. And so he says, no, I don't want to kill my dad. I love him. So he pieces out and leaves. So we do have to fill in that Laius and his wife Jocasta are married, and they have Oedipus, but Oedipus is no longer in the kingdom of Thebes. He's out there in the world. It's also good to know that Jocasta has a brother, Creon. He'll come into the story later. Now, Oedipus is out there in the Greek wilderness, and he runs into a traveling wagon with a noble. He gets in a fight with a noble, and he stabs that noble. He doesn't know it at the time, but that noble was Laius. So, prophecy fulfilled. He's going to keep walking to Thebes, and Thebes is being harassed by a sphinx. A sphinx is the legendary creature that has the body of a winged lion and the torso of a woman. And she's harassing the Theban people, and they happen to no longer have a king because he's disappeared mysteriously, right? Laius, out on the road, just got murdered. And the Sphinx asks Oedipus a riddle. That's kind of her defense mechanism. Solve the riddle, I'll leave. Don't solve the riddle, I'll eat you. But Oedipus is able to solve the riddle, which in my version of the story is what has 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs at night. And the answer that Oedipus gives is, well, man. 4 legs in the morning when you're a baby crawling, 2 legs in the afternoon when you're an adult, and 3 legs when you're an old man with a cane. And the Sphinx says, darn it, That's it. All right. I'm going to take a short break here, and we'll pick it up after. Okay. Where were we? This is just getting good. So Oedipus solves the riddle, and Thebes, since it had been accosted by this creature, is in a celebratory mood. And in fact, when Oedipus comes into the city, he's greeted as a hero. And they say, Oedipus, hero, why don't you become king of Thebes, since you have saved us? And while we're at it, if you're going to become king, you might as well marry our queen, because her husband has gone missing. The queen, of course, being Jocasta. So at that moment, Oedipus, not knowing it, marries his own mother. And with his mother, he has 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. Eteocles and Polynices are the boys, Ismene and Antigone are the girls. Well, some more things happen in the plot of the first of the 3 Theban plays. In Oedipus Rex, he does discover the truth. And Jocasta discovers the truth, and she finds out that she has married her own son. At that moment, she hangs herself in agony and distress. Oedipus himself finds his mother/wife hung, and he's so distraught he takes a pin from her robes and jabs his own eyes out, and leaves and wanders in the wilderness. His wandering in the wilderness is covered in the second of the 3 Theban plays. He hangs out with Antigone a little bit there, and certainly a lot of that does form Antigone's understanding of her family dynamics and how strange they are. So there is going to be some reference to that, but Oedipus at Colonus, which is the second play, not as important to us as the full Oedipus story. The other thing that is going to happen is, since Laius is dead, killed by Oedipus, Oedipus has left, not dead, he will eventually die naturally out there, but blind and no longer king. It creates a power vacuum. Who should be king of Thebes? Well, Oedipus's sons are by rights the heir, and there's a disagreement as to who should be king. So Eteocles takes the throne and says, you know what? I'll take the throne and we'll split it. So me first, then you, Polynices. So Polynices leaves. And then Eteocles is like, actually, being king, pretty good. So I'm not going to give it up. And Polynices is like, what? It's totally my turn. So Polynices rallies a whole bunch of armies from Argives. And so he takes the army of 7 and he attacks his own hometown. And in this battle, Polynices is met on the field of battle by Eteocles, and they fight each other on the battle and kill each other at the same time. Well, now who's king of Thebes? Now, Oedipus has 2 more family members. He has the sisters, Ismene and Antigone, but the crown is not going to go to them. They are women. So instead, remember Creon, Jocasta's brother? He is part of the Theban line now by marriage. So even though he is not descended, you can see way up here that he still can sort of count as having a little bit of that god stuff in him. Creon's family is important because they're going to show up. He has a wife, Eurydice, and he has 2 sons, Haemon and Megaris. Megaris, another death. He died in the war, the Civil War, the Theban Civil War. And Haemon is important because before all this happened, he was betrothed to Ismene. So not married yet, Antigone, not married yet, but he was going to marry his cousin. Now that, I know all the other stuff. That was crazy, but come on, marrying your cousin in ancient Greece, not a big deal. It's like a Saturday. This bubble over here, Ismene, Antigone, Creon, Haemon, Eurydice is going to be in there for a bit. This is our main cast of Antigone. And this background of how we got to here is where the play opens. Now, Creon, when he takes over this mess. The former kings killed each other. The king before that married the queen / his mom. Jabbed his own eyes out. The king before that was murdered on the road, but that was after he took his own heir and nailed him to a mountain rock. So the Theban people, who also there was the Sphinx mixed in there as well, are not in a great place. It's a city-state in chaos. And so Creon comes in and says, no more. This war cannot happen again. And so Eteocles is going to be buried because he was the king. And Polynices I'm going to call a terrorist because he attacked his own hometown. So don't any of you Theban civilians get any ideas about attacking me, your new king, because it's time to lock down Thebes and get Thebes back to order. And so this is when he gives the decree that to us might not make sense, but it's like a infinity prison sentence. He decrees that Polynices will stay dead on the battlefield and rot. So instead of getting that proper burial that would send him to the underworld where he could rest, he's going to wander in purgatory forever. Much like as we approach whatever minute of this video that we're on, you're in now. And so this is where the play opens. The next thing that we did in class is I talked about doing the Antigone study guide. And some of the information that can go in the study guide already just gave in the story of Thebes and the Oedipus family tree. And some of it is going to come from the reading. So in the reading today, we got through question 7. All right, so in the text, we read to page 8 together. So you will need to do that. In yet another video, I will read some of the first pages because Mr. Gum and I took turns reading it to the class, and so you should be afforded the same tool of being introduced to the play with someone reading it for you. But if you want to get started now, know that we read to page 8 in class, which means in the reading guide, you could answer up through question 7. Reading guide is already on the classroom stream. One point that I want to make is that you'll see that the study guide has no due date, meaning it's an ongoing side project to every day that we do some Antigone reading. I will track the class can answer through question 7 now. If you are behind that number, then yeah, you've got some Antigone homework to do because you've got to go and get those questions answered or maybe get some help in understanding the questions that you can't answer. If you are up to that question, then no, there is no homework. So I can't make individual homework assignments for everyone. You have to know whether you're on pace with the study guide or not. So I'll remind you again that we today in class went over this family tree and then read up through page 8, which means you can now answer in the study guide through question 7. Okay. Be looking for a fabulous performance of the first pages of Antigone by me and also another actor known as me. And that's going to be posted later after I post this. See you soon.